Okay, it's on.
Taylor.
How do you know?
Because the light went on.
Oh, so we're
Welcome.
on? Oh, okay. I'm going to call to order this meeting of the Larimer County Board of Commissioners. Today is Wednesday, November 6, 2019. The board is really happy to be up here in Estes Park for one of our two budget hearings that we are conducting to take public comment on both the Larimer County budget and our proposed landfill and transfer station fees. I am Tom Donnelly. I'm the chairman of the Board of County Commissioners this year. I'm also the commissioner representative for District 3, which includes Estes Park. And I'm happy to say that during my entire tenure here on the Board of County Commissioners, we have held these budget hearings, supplemental budget hearings in the town of Estes Park to engage the folks up here. I'm pleased today to introduce my colleagues on the board. From District 1, Commissioner John Cafalis, and from District 2, Commissioner Steve Johnson. We have a number of staff members with us today. Our county manager, Linda Hoffman. And Linda, would you like to try to introduce county staff with us tonight?
I would like a second shot at it.
Very good. Try it.
Because a couple of nights ago, I did not do as well. So I'm Linda Hoffman, the county manager, and to my right is Josh Fudge, our budget director. To his right is Matthew Behunin, who is our senior budget analyst.
Wow.
And around the corner is Michelle Bird, our public affairs director. Joining us and presenting here in a minute or two is the solid waste director, Stephen Gillette. And
a longtime Estes Park resident and the hero of the Long Lake flood. He'll be up here in just a few moments to tell us about the landfill. This meeting is being broadcast on public access, I believe. Is that right, Michelle?
Correct, yes.
And also, you can view this, and there's a number of ways that you can interact with the board. And why don't you talk about that a little
Absolutely.
briefly?
Thank you, commissioners. As you said, it is being broadcast on the Estes Park Public Access Channel, which is also available online if you go to the Estes Park Town website. And we are taking comments both on Facebook and Twitter tonight as well. And individuals can email any questions to bocc@larimer.org, and our county manager, Linda Hoffman, will be monitoring that for us as we go through the evening as well.
Very good. So without further ado, I'm going to ask our landfill director, Stephen Gillette, to come up. He's going to do a presentation on landfill fees and our and also some information about our transfer stations, which was of extreme interest to folks in Estes Park. So welcome, Director Gillette.
Good evening. It's always wonderful to be up in Estes Park, and I want to start by explaining the wonderful picture that's up there. So this past year, we did a cell closure at the Larimer County landfill, and that is showing them almost the finished product there. And the nice thing about this cell closure, we usually budget $1 million to get this done, and it came in under budget, about $800,000. So the good news, bad news is about 4 more years, the landfill will be filled up. So we have to move forward with a replacement for the Larimer County landfill. So right now, just to give you all a history of what we have charged at the landfill over the past years, and again, I have to give kudos to Matthew for doing these wonderful slides, because I bury my mistakes, and he makes them look beautiful, so thank you, Matthew. So right here, we can see that we have 3 different lines on here. The blue line is loose commercial trash, the next line up is compacted trash, and this one that looks like it was on steroids is rubble type material. And that includes things as shingles, construction and demolition material, which is referred to in the industry as C&D materials. So the heavy stuff that comes in, we can't compact it. So we need to charge more for it because all we're selling is airspace. So if you look at these trends, we've been trying to work on a 6% increase, and we're staying in those boundaries, and we are competitive with surrounding landfills. So, each year, the Solid Waste Enterprise Fund needs to set aside money for future facilities. And we've been doing that. And we do that by making money. And you can see, we have been pretty successful and, doing a good job. But you see here in the next few years, we're gonna start spending it. And that's for the Solid Waste Infrastructure Master Plan, which is a plan to build 4 different facilities that, when we're all complete, we'll be diverting 40% of the materials away from the landfill. So, this next slide shows where our revenues come from. Landfill fees, miscellaneous, recycle fees, and projected revenues into the future. If you look at the recycle revenue, you see it's decreasing, decreasing, decreasing. The recycling market is not well in the United States. It's still the right thing to do, but it's not generating the revenue that we need to make it profitable. The green shows miscellaneous income, which most of that is interest income. And the only anomaly, in 2012, we got some money we sold the right to drill an oil well on our north property. And,
Oh, gas well.
yes, sir?
A gas well.
Well, no, to search for oil.
Oh.
They were just searching for
Oh,
it.
no, oh, yeah, yeah.
And so we got some extra money, so
On the
again,
new
it
one.
went into the fund. Fund balance, fund balance. Again, people ask, why is the solid waste fund accumulating so much money? And again, the reason we're doing that is there's a plan. At some point, our landfill, which was opened in 1963, will be full. We have to replace it. We have to build a modern landfill. We have to build a transfer station. We're gonna build a C&D facility and a compost facility. Then later on, we'll add food waste to it. So when we get all these facilities built, we'll be diverting 40% of what's going into the landfill now away from the landfill. This slide shows where our money is going, ongoing operation, and then you see we're gonna start spending money on building these facilities. And we're starting in earnest in 19, and as you see it, by 2024, we'll have all these facilities completed and operational.
And Stephen,
Yes, sir.
when is the current landfill projected to reach its capacity where we'll have to shut it down?
In 2024. And the new landfill will be ready by 2023.
Somebody here?
Thank you.
So each year, we take a stab at finding out if we're in the ballpark with our fees. And we look at various landfills that are our competitors. Our nearest competitor is the alt landfill, which is these rates down here. And then the next one is closest is in Erie. Things I like to point out on this is tires. Larimer County landfill and Dad's down in Denver are the only 2 landfills that accept tires. This is a concern because our commissioners don't want to see our borrow pits along the road filled with used tires. And the road and bridge director certainly doesn't want to pick those up. So we try to keep the recycling of tires at an affordable rate that people will not make a bad decision. Also, I need to point out, cars. We allow trailers, cars, pickups to come into the Larimer County landfill. Some landfills don't allow cars. And if you look at the rates for the pickups, we charge $18 with the tax for a pickup to come in. Other places are as high as $118 for a pickup. So one, we keep this very affordable because again, we want the trash to come to the landfill, not on the side of the road.
And how do we manage to keep everything so affordable? Is that because we run a really tight ship? Can you provide a few details about that, Stephen?
Again, we are a public entity. The profit we do make goes into the solid waste fund balance, but we don't have stockholders that we're beholden to turn a profit. I'm not against profit, but these other landfills are privately owned, and they have to return a profit to their customers.
So that's a factor that
Oh,
contributes to what they charge for their
Correct.
costs. Yeah.
So next, here are the rates for next year. Again, sticking to the 6%, not totally. I have to point out that we sort of have a penalty in here for, if someone comes in with tree limbs and they want to landfill them and not put them through our green waste program, we're going to charge them more to landfill it because there's an alternative that's cheaper if they'll follow our rules, 6 foot in length, et cetera, et cetera.
So what is I'm sorry, I'm not as familiar with your green waste program. Is that, you allow, if there are certain dimensions that they can,
Yeah, so if you bring in grass, leaves, tree limbs, and stumps, and you follow our rules for their size, you can leave them without trash in a separate area, then we grind them and they're composted. So one, you can be part of the solution. If not, you can decide to landfill it. We just charge you more for it,
okay, thank you.
because we have a finite amount of airspace.
Huh.
Again, talking about tires, again, if you go, in Colorado, you're not allowed to landfill a tire. All tires have to be recycled. So if you go to different places, I mean, they're charging up to $25 for a passenger tire to be recycled. And as you get into the bigger sizes, they go over $100.
Wow.
So we keep it affordable because we don't want them on the side of the road. Here are the rates for Berthoud, Wellington, Red Feather transfer stations. And again, a 6.5 and 7.163. Operating these rural transfer stations costs us a little bit more. So again, we have a minimum load of a half cubic yard, which we do not have at the landfill, but at these rural locations, we allow for that. And also trying to keep it affordable, because we don't want our Forest Service to be the home of this trash. Now getting to Estes Park. Estes Park, you know, someone would go, hey, I thought you said 6%. Well, right down here at the bottom, these rates will increase in 2020 to include costs of the residential recycling facility anticipated opening in 2019. So yes, we did open a new facility up here. The county paid for it. We're paying for the cost. We don't actually know how much it's gonna cost to operate, so I didn't feel comfortable raising it more. After we do an audit of how much it costs for this year, next year I'll come back and have a different idea of what it will cost.
How do folks in Estes Park and the Estes Valley, is it a commercial trash hauling business that collects the trash, and then
Mhm.
with recycling, it's not curbside, right? It's,
So they have a
Folks drop it.
residential drop-off center, so if you are from a resident, you're allowed to take it there for free. If you're a business or you collect it commercially, you can take it to the transfer station, but recycling in Estes, if you bring in a cubic yard of compacted recyclables, you pay $15.85, or if it's loose, you pay $14 a cubic yard. And that's, again, as I said, I need to come back, because right now, at the Larimer County Recycle Center, the trash haulers are paying $79 a ton to leave their single-stream material.
but how is trash picked up in the town?
They have private haulers,
They have private haulers.
yes. Or people haul it themselves to the transfer station.
Yeah. Only Loveland has a municipal trash
Correct.
service.
I think-
Yeah, we're the only one.
That's right.
So, one of the things I was remiss in telling you is right here in the proposed fees. Go to the next. So right here at the bottom, you see the diversion front range, 15 cents per commercial cubic yard. So right now, everyone's paying, that's commercial, 35 cents for every yard they bring into a landfill. Colorado passed a law last year saying the 9 Front Range counties are going to divert trash, and to help with that, they're charging each commercial load 15 cents per cubic yard. So right now, if you're a business, you're gonna pay that, and then next year, that 15 will be 30 cents, the following year, it'll be 45 cents, and the following year, it'll be 60 cents. And then after that, it goes up by CPI. But that is a state, I mean, this isn't something that we have power over doing or not. The state says we will collect it. So, that will be, and that money is going to be collected, and they've set up a, I'll call it a commission that will decide how these monies will be used to divert more materials from landfills. People can apply for it.
And if it's done properly, that seems like a good thing to do, but in the end, that cost is passed on to the consumers, to us.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, do you have any questions?
No, I don't, do you have any questions, Commissioner? Any additional questions, John?
One more, please.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you very much for your experience and knowledge, Mr. Gillette. When you talked about those cell closures, could you describe that a little bit more? I mean, what's the space? How big is that space?
Okay. So right now,
How many cells are left? I don't know.
So right now, there's 4 cells that are left. They're
Oh.
each 20 acres, but they're at different levels of completion. So we completed one cell of 20 acres, and usually that costs us $1 million, because we have to put 3.5 foot of compacted soil and clay on it to meet the specs for the state standards.
Thank you. That's helpful.
And Linda, real briefly, there's a proposal here for some fee increases and some changes to the fee structure with regards to tipping fees and et cetera, that we've just heard about from Stephen. What is the process for adoption going to be, and how, if folks have listened to this and maybe want to think about it a day or two and then contact the board, what avenues do they have to provide any kind of public comment, and when will the board take action?
So the process as we have planned it is that anyone who still has comments could either email tonight or in the next few days, and they would email to BOCC, which stands for Board of County Commissioners, at larimer.org, and they could send in their questions and we'll provide answers for them. Stephen would likely put this on the agenda for adoption on Tuesday morning
This coming
This
Tuesday.
coming Tuesday
Okay.
at 9 o'clock. The materials for that consideration will be published online, usually on Friday evening, sometimes Saturday or even Monday morning. And anyone who wanted to comment could come to the meeting at that time. So that's at 200 West Oak Street in Fort Collins, 9 o'clock Tuesday morning, or of course, the email option of bocc@larimer.org.
Very good. Well, thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
Michelle, I'll just check with you real quick. Have we had any emailed or Facebooked questions with regards to this issue?
We haven't had any questions. We've had a few likes,
Oh, good.
both on Twitter and Facebook, but no questions yet.
Very good. Then we will move on.
I am not monitoring the email, though.
Oh.
County Manager
I
Laughlin
am,
is.
and we have no emails at this time.
Very good. We did receive an email at the last hearing that only came to the Board of Commissioners and not to you. So I read that one. But maybe you'll get your chance.
Maybe
Okay.
I will.
Okay. Thank you, Stephen. Good to see you. Your old stomping grounds.
You take care, Mr. Gillette.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
It's like old home days for him.
Gosh.
And so we're going to move on. Our budget director, Josh Fudge, I believe, is going to do a brief, Matthew's going to do a brief presentation on the 2020 budget. So Matt, why don't you introduce yourself and we'll go ahead and get going. Unless, Linda, did you have any introductory comments?
I was just going to thank Josh and Matthew. They're a mighty department of two and
Yeah.
prepare a substantial budget.
Right.
They do that in part because they are outstanding staff members, but also they have some help from outstanding staff members in other departments and offices. So we are grateful to the work of those distributed teams throughout our departments and offices, and to our own budgeted staff, Josh Fudge and Matthew Behunin.
Yeah, so true.
Dynamic duo, perhaps.
Mhm.
Pardon?
Yes,
Oh, nothing.
they are.
Don't mind.
Batman and Robin. Okay,
Thank
go
you.
ahead, Matt.
All right, so here's our agenda for today. We're going to talk about the key initiatives. The budget's big, and so we can't talk about all the details. So we're going to do a summary by service categories of expenses, also by account type. We're going to talk about our revenues. We're going to talk about TIF, which is tax increment financing, capital budget highlights and service proposal highlights, and then we'll review what's next in the budget process. So just some key initiatives for 2020, implementing the strategic plan. A few items to call out: data sharing and analysis. This is to house and analyze and make and facilitate better decision making. We are going to fund a housing and childcare study, a position for inclusionary job coaching, community health resilience mapping project, new solid waste facilities. As Stephen mentioned, there's a lot going on there. The behavioral health facility construction, and finally implementation of the ranch master plan over the next 5 years is ramping up. Also continue to focus on public safety. Public safety is the largest service area in terms of operating budget. 34% of all of our costs go to public safety departments. The jail improvement project is the largest general funded project that the county is taking on right now. Also body-worn cameras, criminal justice services staff, an EOC, Emergency Operations Center, staffing for the coroner and the district attorney, and finally, hopefully, completion of the 2013 flood recovery projects. So by service category, and for those not familiar with the county structure, public safety includes the sheriff's office, the district attorney, the coroner's office, criminal justice services, alternative sentencing, community corrections, as well as emergency management. Human and economic health includes our human services department, health and environment, the CSU extension office, behavioral health department, and the workforce and economic development department. And each of those departments do many, many things. So community planning, infrastructure, and resources. This is the departments that used to be known as public works, including planning, community development, engineering, code enforcement, road and bridge, natural resources, solid waste, and the ranch. Support services This is where the magic happens because the budget office is part of this service category, as well as the Board of County Commissioners. This is where your budget
Wow.
is included. IT, HR, Finance, County Attorney's Office, Fleet, and Facilities are all in support services. Public Records and Information is the Assessor's Office, Office of Clerk and Recorder, Treasurer, and Michelle's team, Public Affairs. So the subtotal net operating budget for those service categories is $289.4 million for 2020. What is not included in those numbers is capital, disaster recovery, and then non-operation accounts. So when we transfer money from the general fund to the capital fund, you budget the transfer and then you also budget the capital expense, but we don't want to count it twice because you're not spending the money twice. It's just a way to budget. So there are non-operational accounts that are in the budget but are not represented here due to the reason we separate it out is it makes it easier to track from year to year. So the expenditure highlights, personnel cost increasing 5.5%. This is a combination of salary increases and new positions. The jail improvement project, we're forecasting 34 and a half new FTEs, $1.6 million there. And then also some adjustments to the sheriff's sworn staff step plan. Non-personnel operating costs increasing by 5% or $10.3 million. Behavioral health services is increasing $1.7 million. The remainder is largely capital projects that use operating cost accounts like road maintenance. It might be part of a capital plan, but it's not a capitalized asset, so it's part of an operating account. Capital outlay, this is going up 172%, $87.6 million, largely because of the jail improvement project, the new fleet facility that is budgeted for, the behavioral health center, and also the first year of the new ranch master plan. Debt service is increasing by $1.4 million or 28% over the revised budget. The certificates of participation for the jail improvement project require an initial payment of $6 million. It was originally planned for 19, but did not occur due to the timing of the issuance of the certificates of participation or COPs. Ranch debt payments were complete in 2019, and most of the other debt service payments come from improvement districts. Interfund transfers are going down $25.2 million or 37%. We had a large one-time general fund transfer in 2019 that is going away this year, and or being reduced to $4.4 million rather. And also we are moving a big part of the IT fund from special internal service fund to the general fund, so there's no longer a transfer into that fund. We'll just pay for that directly out of the general fund. Okay, so let's talk about revenues. Property taxes, increasing the revenues. We're forecasting to increase 15% or $18 million. It's a big increase. If you remember, the reassessment, the reappraisal happens every other year. And so 7.5, if you take 15 divided by 2, the annual increase is about in line with historical average. Historical average is about 6.5. We budget for, in reappraisal years, about a little less than 6%. And so it's higher than we forecasted. And that was largely in part to the increase in oil and gas values, property values. A year ago, we collected about $500,000 in property tax revenues from oil and gas properties, and this year we're going to collect $4 million. So it's a relatively small part of the budget, but it's a big increase, so that's why we want to call it out here. Some of the other revenues, we are being conservative in our budgeting, so they're going to actually, the budget would be declining. In the case of sales use tax and specific ownership tax, external charges for service, we're forecasting to decline. Interest earnings also going to decline with decline in interest rates, the action by the Federal Reserve, and also the spending down of fund balances. It's better to be surprised by more revenue than you budget, then be surprised by less. So that's why we do that.
Good one. Yep.
License and permits down 2%. Debt proceeds eliminated in 2020. We're not taking out. We're planning for debt revenue next year. And total revenues are lower than expenses by 110.5 million. So this just shows that overall countywide, we're spending down our fund balances on capital projects. Mostly the revenues that we collected last year. Okay, we've got to mention TIF. So tax increment financing as a percent of gross assessed value has gone up over the past 10 or so years, rapidly increased, been about 6 million is diverted to tax increment financing districts, or commonly known as URAs, urban renewal authorities. Any special district created by a city that diverts county revenues is a TIF district. This graph is a dual axis graph, so the blue line is related to the labels on the left, so about 5% or a little more than 5% of our assessed value is diverted. And then on the right you see the assessed value. So the blue line is TIF assessed as a percent of gross of total property value. So I don't know if I'm explaining this correctly, but is that good? All right, I'll keep going. The largest TIF district, the Centera project, the Centera Urban Renewal Authority, diverts about $2.5 million in county revenue a year alone. It's our largest one, and it expires in 2030, and so we're looking forward to that revenue in the future. Capital budget highlights. So when we categorize capital projects, we put them in capital renewal, capital expansion, land and real asset acquisition, capital studies, or disaster-related projects. The reason we would separate renewal and expansion is we don't defer maintenance as a county. We take care of the capital assets that we have before looking to expand. But there is a significant amount of budget dollars going to capital expansion, as you can see. 125.4 million in capital expansion next year, 493 million in the next 5 years, the next 5-year capital plan. There's a good chance if you go to the ranch or to a park or to the landfill that you will see some construction going on. So this slide shows sometimes if you look at different parts of the budget in brief or different parts of this presentation, your capital budget might have a different number depending on whether disaster is included or not, or non-operating counts are included. So this kind of breaks that out and shows that how we get to that 184 million total. Capital budget highlights: 76 total projects, 184 million in capital expenditures. You can see that Road and Bridge and Natural Resources have the bulk of the projects, although Facilities has the bulk of the dollars. So just to highlight some of the capital projects: business software replacement. We're replacing the ERP system next year, and the general fund contributes a significant amount of money to all the major software programs that the county runs, 3.9 million in 2020. The ranch has various capital renewal projects. This is the part of the presentation I get to say Zamboni. So the Zamboni is being replaced. Wi-Fi at the event centers and lighting. That's what that number, that 3 million represents. Fleet replacement. So if you're getting pulled over by a county sheriff deputy, we replace those vehicles regularly, so they're going to catch you. Snow plows. This is the type of item in the fleet replacement plan. The county-wide replacement plan, we were just over at, we had an election yesterday, so if you voted, your letter was opened by a machine. That was very expensive. It does 90,000 in a day, and so that equipment needs to be replaced, and it's on a schedule, and that's part of the county-wide replacement plan. Natural resource has various projects, capital renewal projects, 2.2 million. Facilities, this would be the HVAC and other component replacement parts of facilities. And road and bridge, this would be the things like highway safety railings, the guardrails, and those types of components that are related to roads and bridges. Capital expansion, like I said, jail improvement, big ticket item, 50.5 million budgeted for 2020. Vine Street replacement, this refers to the fleet shop, almost 30 million. Behavioral Health Center, 18.5 million. Ranch Master Plan, 11.8 million. That's just a little bit of what's coming for the ranch. We're going to pave County Road 72 from US Road 287 to CR 21. That 6 million, and the I-25 expansion, 2.8 million. Land and real asset acquisition projects. This would include the land acquisition done by Natural Resources to preserve open spaces, the purchase of the Emergency Operations Center, Road and Bridge Resources, water and aggregate to maintain the roads. Regional Waste Shed, this is a solid waste project, $10 million under capital studies. And then 2 disaster projects, CR44H and CR47, for 7.2 and 5.4 million respectively. Moving on to service proposals. We had about $3 million, nearly $3 million in service proposals that would receive general fund support in the 2020 proposed budget. We had received 46 requests, 5.1 million in expenditures and 4.3 million in general fund support. So not everything that was proposed was included in the final proposed budget, proposed to us rather from the departments. And let's go over some of the projects that are in the budget. Internship program, county manager, would be funded with existing funds and a DOLA grant. Larimer Humane Society contract, that 68,000 is the increase in the contract, not the total amount. The electronic plan review is modernizing the community development plan review process with some technology. The coroner's office is receiving additional staff and a truck. District attorney, we're funding additional staff to review abuse referral cases and also digital evidence. Engineering, we are funding a position, or is it, I think it's contract work to manage the additional EPA and state regulations related to stormwater. Improvement district tech, as the number of improvement district increases, so does the demand on staff to manage those. That will be paid for with improvement district funds, as well as construction management software for engineering, $30,000 to help manage all those projects that they oversee. So facilities, or additional facility staff, they're going to absorb those costs within their existing allocation. Finance is going to hire additional sales tax accounting tech. This is for sales tax compliance. Finance and road and bridge, so this would be the extension of a limited term accounting tech position that assists with FEMA reimbursement paperwork, which is critical. Human resources, moving a position from the benefits fund to the general fund. As mentioned earlier, the step plan for the sheriff's sworn deputies is being adjusted. Veteran Services is receiving a request for $87,000 in administrative cost support, and the Workforce Center is receiving funding for a high school equivalency program for those working on their GEDs. I'm just going to keep going. Business analysts for the data project, as previously mentioned, part of the strategic plan for IT. Multiple departments will be working on the Community Health and Resilience Mapping Project. This is to measure and demonstrate progress in areas of health and community resilience. Strategic analysis, child care and housing study, and then also inclusionary job coaching to help the county better manage and hire those who have disabilities and work on other inclusionary issues. Okay, so in terms of service expansion, the first three are for criminal justice services, victim witness staffing, and also records management. The third one down, those are due to new state regulations. Pretrial service staffing is an issue related to workload to continue managing the pretrial clients that come through the county. Community development will have those three proposals will be funded with fees. So we're taking over electrical inspections and permitting from the state. We are taking over also, we're going to hire a planner for work previously performed by the town of Estes Park for the Estes Valley unincorporated areas. And also the short-term rental limited term staffing to manage the new county regulations related to short-term rentals. We're hiring next year a consultant to help us develop a cost allocation plan so that we can better satisfy requirements from the state and federal government related to grants, especially in human services and other grant-funded departments. And human resources, we have a need to cover the license costs for all the election workers that come in. We need to maintain their status in our payroll system so we can give them tax statements, and that cost is related to those election workers, and it will be cyclical. Human resources is going to increase an existing staff person from part-time to full-time to work on internal communications, and information technology IT department's going to do some work to secure our network. If one department gets hacked, the whole county network is at risk currently. So if you segment the network, you're less at risk of cyber attacks. And then finally, Public Affairs Department is going to get $8,000 to do the biannual community survey. And that is all the highlights from the budget.
Wow.
So the next step is November 12th, 2:30 p.m. There's a budget retreat for the additional direction from the commissioners to our staff as we prepare for the final adopted budget. December 10th at 9 a.m. Admin Matters will review those final changes with adoption taking place December 20th at 1:30 p.m.
Very good.
And that's all I have.
Very good. Are there questions for Matthew at this time from my colleagues?
No.
No? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Going back to tax increment financing, I thought, Matthew, you said that the total, the tax increment financing value is 5% of the total assessed value. So what is the total dollar amount that is being redirected, for example, and projected in 2020?
Looking at the forecast we had put together, it was 6.5 million.
The total amount?
Yeah.
And you had mentioned earlier that perhaps 2.5 million was from the Centerra Urban Renewal Authority?
Correct, yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Very good. This is a public hearing to take comment and input on the county budget. The room is sparsely populated with folks who are from the public at this point. But I will check in with Michelle Bird, our Public Affairs Manager, to see if we've received any questions via any of our social media outlets.
We have not yet. Again, we have multiple likes.
Oh, good. Multiple.
About the viewing tonight, but no questions yet.
I think Matthew was so thorough, there's nothing by email either.
Very good,
But
Linda.
I think it's important to say that you guys are still willing to take input via
Yes.
email
Yes.
about
I
the
was gonna-
proposed budget
I was
at
gonna read that out.
vocc.larimer.org. So just because people weren't able to make it tonight, they can rewatch these budget hearings to learn more. They're available on our YouTube page, as well as the town of Estes. They keep it on their page as well.
So Matthew, back up one slide there if you don't mind, can you? So this is our, I don't know if anybody, I don't know what you can see if you watch this, if you're watching this online or something. Can you see it, Michelle? Can you see the thing on the screen on the? Okay, so this is really the process. You have really, truly, until December 20th to submit comments. Would be better if they could be a little, if you expected us to make substantive changes to the budget if it was done prior to that, but you know, the budget is a moral document. It's the most important thing that this Board of Commissioners really does, and we take your comments very seriously. So if you, as Michelle said, if you'd like to engage in the process, you still have time to do so. Manager Hoffman.
I would note to anyone who's listening that it is the county's practice to not include things that are on the ballot in the proposed budget because it's not known to us whether or not the measure would pass. So the budget that we've presented tonight is without the ballot measure that failed yesterday at the ballot. So there would not be a substantial change between the recommended or the proposed and the final budget because you know, there's no change to be made. This budget did not assume that the measure would pass.
Very true. All right, any final comments from my colleagues on the board?
Good job, Matthew.
Yeah, good work, you guys. You did such a thorough job that there were no questions. Just perhaps as a parting word before we recess, I will be back here in Estes Park tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. For the Mayor's Chat, and we'll be at Coffee on the Rocks, 510 Moraine Avenue, right here in Estes, 9 o'clock. If you have any questions about anything, county budget or whatever's on your mind, come down and talk with the mayor and myself. We'll be here bright and early tomorrow morning. It's a blustery evening in Estes Park, and so with nothing further to come before the board will stand adjourned. Thanks everyone for listening.